Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Ames Show after a break last week for the Jubilee. I am joined by Michael St. John Paul Ames. Hello, Mike.
Hello there. Welcome to my show.
Just because it's your name doesn't mean it's your show. But today we're going to be talking about how to boost recruiter productivity and therefore lift your profits. Is that right, Mike?
Yes, we absolutely are. I mean, it's such an important thing right about now. And I've been meaning to do this show for a while, but with the recession coming particularly, it's something we really need to dig into.
Okay. Wrong one. So before we get into this today, Mike, I wanted to ask a question, which is I'm sure there's as many definitions for productivity as there are different types of hot dinner. So can you give us your definition of productivity, please?
Well, there's two things really. I mean, it's all about making the most of what you have. I mean, that's the bottom line with productivity. Another word for it is efficiency. So the first thing is if you consider the people that you have a finite number of hours, amount of time really that they can spend every week effectively making money for you. That's the deal. Time to money conversion. That's what they're doing. Productivity means making the maximum amount of revenue from the time that you have per consultant hour, right? That's the deal. So, I mean, we're going to talk about the metrics in a minute, but that is essentially it. Now, if you take that as being the driving force, what will happen is if you become more productive, your revenues will go up, but your costs won't go up in the same way. A lot of people lift their revenues by hiring more consultants. Get more consultants in because then you think, well, you'll make more placements, which is probably true for most consultants that you hire. The downside is your revenues go up, but your costs go up. And as businesses become more and more mature, what happens is the costs go up at a slightly higher rate than your profits or revenues go up. So your profits start to drop down. It's very, very common. And in fact, if you look at some really big businesses, they make two bob and a conquer in profit. And how it got that way was 1 month at a time, one hire at a time. So it's really important to zero in on productivity and make sure you make it as high as you can, but also you keep it at that level as you continue to grow, right? Now, as you do that, as you lift your revenues but not your costs, here's the really cool bit. This is the bit I like the most. Most of that revenue slips to the bottom line because there's no real extra costs. I mean, you've got to pay out a bit more commission, I accept that, but predominantly what you have is an increase in revenue, which is almost identical to the increase in profits. And that's where we need to be, right there.
Okay. All right, Mike. So that makes sense. So the next question I've got is sort of why are we talking about this? Why are we talking about productivity? Why is it something that's important for our audience to know about?
Well, I hinted, obviously, a few minutes ago, the first reason we've got a recession coming, okay? And the recession, the companies that are most productive do better in a recession. If you're a bit flabby around the edges and you're carrying too many costs and your profit ratios are low, then you're going to suffer when the recession comes. If you're as lean as you can be and you're maximizing the profits, you have plenty of opportunity to let revenues drop a little bit and eat into those profits to survive and keep your team together. And just like last time, it's those companies that keep their teams together in the recession that will do best when we come out of the recession. So having a lot of extra profit means you can do that. The second reason is we just like profit, don't we? I mean, let's be honest.
We do like profit. I mean, profits more often than not is why a lot of business owners become business owners, right? They want that freedom that having money brings. And I do like that referencing it to the recession because you know what says that a single grain of rice can tip the scale, and it's very much like that when it comes to survival in a recession. We no idea how hard it's going to hit us, whether it's going to be a 2008 or what. So there's an element of you want to do as much as you can in preparation for that. And then also as your competitors die off because they haven't done all of this.
Well, they won't die off. They'll just suffer, won't they? Really, they'll shed staff because they'll have to.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a win-win because there either is a recession, but you're prepared for it, or there isn't, and you're just making shed loads more money. To me, it's win-win. I have to say.
Yes, definitely agree with you on that one. Okay, so Mike, can we now talk about measurements? Because no matter what you say, if you're trying to improve something, you need to measure them so you know if you're improving or not, right?
If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Yeah.
Yeah. So can we talk about those metrics that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, there are lots of metrics that you can use, and it's impossible for me in the time that we have in this show to go through them all. So I've picked out some of them that I think are either no-brainers, are just easy to do, or would have an effect if you could actually take the time and effort to, and I don't mean that dismissively, time and effort, because I know everyone's short of time, but if you do invest the time and effort, they'll actually give you a really good response. So the first of these is profit per employee.
You're a big fan of this one, I know you are.
Oh, yeah, because I tell you what happens, right? So which way around am I? That way, right? Okay, so there you go. So you grow, right? And that's good. And as you grow, you hire people, your profitability drops because you're bringing people in, right? And they're not generating revenue to start
Yeah.
with.
You got to train them up and
They
get
do,
them
yeah.
used to on the phone and stuff like
And
that.
sometimes you can do it quite quickly within a few months. Sometimes it takes longer. A lot of it depends how much work you've got and the role that these people have come in to do, of course. If they're just resourcing or managing existing accounts, then hopefully they'll get up to speed fairly quickly. If they're to do with new business or maybe client care or whatever, then it's going to take a little longer, perhaps. But anyway, there's a cost without revenue for a period of time. And what happens is, so your costs go up, your profitability comes down. That's the wrong way around, isn't it? I
Yeah, you
can't
don't
get
know.
this.
It's
Anyway,
mirrored
whatever.
as well.
Whatever. And then gradually your profitability goes back, but it doesn't go quite up back to where it was before, right? And then the next hire, it drops again, and the next hire, and the next hire. So gradually you become less and less efficient. Now, if you don't believe this, you only have to look at an awful lot of established client companies out there, recruitment companies, whose turnover is quite enormous, but their profit is tiny. Someone brought my attention to a company the other day. I was talking about this in an event, actually. Someone brought my attention to the fact that one company, who I'd heard of, so you probably will as well, they got close on 100 million turnover and they made £675,000 profit. Now, okay, I didn't look at the accounts. They may have had a big spend that year or taken a hit or something. I don't know. But in any event, that is not good. Even when Modis bought my business, we got the books out for Modis. This is going back a wee while. And they didn't make a lot of money for the turnover that they had. And how did that happen? Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't Modis. I do tell that. It was Harvey Nash.
Yeah.
Apologies for Modis, actually.
Modis will be coming after you. They're gone now, but
no, they're owned by Deco. Anyway, but Harvey Nash, when they did it, the big turnover, small profit. How did that happen? It happened 1 month and one hire at a time. So this profit per employee, which is just simply taking your profits and dividing the number of employees into a number, and you've got to keep that at least steady or going up. That's the objective. As soon as it starts to come down, you need to do something about it, and you keep it on a graph so you can see what's happened to it over time. Just that one thing will make a difference if you start to measure it.
Yeah, so give allowances for when you do hire someone. It will go down for a little bit, but it shouldn't go down for more than 4 or 5 months. Is that what you're saying?
Well, hopefully less than that, but yeah. And the other thing is to, when you hire people, hire in batches, 1 or 2 people, and then stop. Get everyone back up to maximum productivity and then start again. So your growth is kind of like going in a step like that, really.
Okay. All right. So now let's go on to metric number 2.
Okay, right. So if anyone's got any questions on these, by the way, please throw them in. Anything or any pushback on any of these, I'm very happy to discuss it. Okay, metric number 2, for those people that do contingent work, it's your contingent vacancies to fee ratios. Now, this is not measured on, if one requirement is 3 roles, that's 3 vacancies. That's how that works in terms of the ratios. And then you measure the number of those vacancies that turn into fees. And we do that because it is a mark of efficiency. If you're more retained or exclusive, then that's going to be close to 1-to-1, obviously. So most of the effort that you put in, most of the time your consultants invest, is going to end up in some money. Whereas in the contingent world, I think at one point it was 1 in 5. So you work for 5 days, but only get paid for 1 of them. And someone told me it had gone up to 1 in 7, which I'm not sure I believe that, but hey, it might have done during the bad old days. But I think that it is a real mark of efficiency. You've got this much time. How much of that time turns into money? And the vacancy, measuring against vacancy type, is a useful and very easy thing to do, because you can just get it from your CRM system like that, dead quick, dead easy.
Okay, that's fair enough. Can we go on to metric number 3?
Now, this is a big one, really, because we all measure conversion ratios. Well, at least I hope that we do. So you measure, okay, so vacancies, CVs submitted, interviews, offers, acceptances, starters, right? So those ratios. And those ratios tell us certain things about the efficiency of consultants, okay, so people doing the actual job, hiring managers, how they treat the agency, and vacancy types. Are some vacancies much easier to satisfy than others? Let me tell you the story, right? So I'm doing some work with a client quite recently, and I'm very big on all of this, right? Measuring all of this data. I really like it. And I said they were doing, their average fees were like, well, yeah, you don't know who they are. They're 11 grand, right? So it doesn't make any difference. And they were doing a set of placements of about 4.5 to 5 grand. So why are you bothering with those then? So, well, we just got one of the junior resources working on it. The client just emails them through. They only use us. We send some CVs. They turn it around real quick. And we reckon it takes about 3 or 4 hours per placement. That's it, tops. 3 or 4 hours for 4 grand. Yeah, well, I'll go with that.
I'll have that.
Well, I'll go with that, right? So really, this idea of measuring against vacancy type to see which vacancies you're better at converting than others. And the same goes for hiring managers. We all know that some hiring managers are a regular pain in the arse. You send a batch of CVs forward, they ignore them for 3 weeks, then they come back, and of course, most of them have gone, the candidates have gone to work elsewhere, so you've got to rework the role, and then they change their mind, and then they sit on it a bit, then they don't interview, then they cancel interview, yada, 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 yada. Others are good as gold. You send them the CVs, they turn it around the same day, interviews are arranged really quickly, they make a decision, they hire, and that's it, it's done. If you measure conversion ratios against hiring managers as well as vacancies, then you'll begin to see the people that you should be spending more time with and the vacancies that you should be spending more time on. And it's very cool. Not everyone does it. Very few people do it really, but I like to do it with my private clients because I think it tells us, again, it's this making the most of your consultant hour. Making the most, where am I going to put this hour to make me the most money? Which clients am I going to deal with, and which vacancy types am I going to work? Now, realistically, let's get real just for a second. In the real world, you are going to deal with hiring managers that you don't particularly want to, because you kind of have to. It's on a big account, and you have to. And you are going to work vacancy types that you don't want to, but you have to. But the deal is work less of them. Whenever you can, just work less, and work less with those people, or put a junior person on it, or do something. But make sure that you're making the most of that consultant hour. Now, when it comes to the vacancy conversions against the consultant, this is the same data, really, just cut in a different way. Well, that tells us how good they are, quite frankly. You know, okay, if a consultant's working a crappy client and crappy vacancies, well, you'll know that anyway, and you'll expect the conversion ratios to be crappy. But if the vacancies are good and the hiring managers are good and they're not converting in the way that should, then obviously there's a problem with the consultant, and that gives you an edge then to do some training or coaching. So that's a really, really important ratio that you should use.
And again, these are kind of things to do now. I know we mentioned the recession at the beginning. Now times are still good. You know, the recession's supposed to hit later on in the year. If you get this in order now, and you recognize that one of your consultants has a gap in training or needs a bit more of your time, you now have 3, maybe 4 months to sort of correct that. So by the time the rough times hit, you've sort of preempted it. Whereas if not, you end up sort of making shorter term decisions during times of crisis. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I mean, ultimately, this is about not just prepping for the recession, because like you say, what's going to happen, we don't know. I think it's going to come though. But it's more than that. It's getting your business so as it's at peak performance. It's working the business until it's in really good shape. And why wouldn't you want to do that?
I don't know. Okay, so now metric number 4, Michael.
Okay, and this is really about measuring contribution, not fees. Well, you can measure fees, of course, but contribution simply means you take the desk cost of a consultant And that's all the attributable costs, including if they've got a resourcer or share a resourcer, anything that's attributable to them that they've got control over is part of their desk cost. You simply subtract that away from their fees, right? Dead easy. And that gives you the contribution. Then all you need to do is add up everybody's contributions, take off the overheads, and you have a pretty much a profit before tax, right? So why is that important to us? Well, because some people bring in quite large fees, but they cost us a lot of money as well. And what the contribution does is it levels the playing field. So we might get someone making half as much as someone else, but they actually cost a third as much, which means we're making more of them. And that in turn helps you to realize the kind of people that you should be hiring, the kind of people that you should be promoting, the kind of people that you should perhaps be having a word with about their targets, because yes, you're doing really well, but contribution wise, not so much. So you can keep a league table on contributions. You can even pay commission on contributions, which is how it was done for some companies years ago. And it encourages the right kind of thinking, because it ain't just about getting a fee that counts. It's the cost of getting that fee in the first place. All of this comes back to, cost for return on investment. So that's a really cool thing to measure.
Okay, fantastic. And then the final metric, Mike.
Okay, so this one is really about the time it takes to fill a vacancy, right? So, and if you do it per vacancy type, again, you can begin to see how much time is being invested, which then you can convert into money if you want to give you an idea of how expensive each vacancy type is. You can do it against hiring managers as well, but not really that bothered. Now, you don't have to do this forever. You can just do a sample of it so you can get an idea roughly how much it costs. So you can then see, well, we make this much money, but it costs us this much. So we don't make as much on those. Going back to the story of the people that were whacking out the $4,500 fees, their cost per vacancy was very low. And in fact, in the same company, there's one of the other, a partner of the firm, and he is a search consultant. And we worked out that the time to fill the vacancy when multiplied by their hourly rate meant that they made less than the $4,500 post on quite a few of their placements. Honestly, it's staggering, really. So I know that's a real drag, and you wouldn't want to measure time for every single vacancy. The consultants would rebel.
Riot, yeah.
Yeah, they would, yeah. But if you can begin to do some tests on that, and you can use a product like Toggle. And what Toggle does is you can record time very quickly by clicking on something. It starts recording time against that particular task, and then you click it and it stops again. So you could use that as toggl.com. Or you can just get people to fill in a form if you want, but it's just to get an estimate of how much time is being invested per vacancy type, and it does matter.
So with that one, how long do you think people would have to monitor it for? A week, a month? How long do you think they'd have to?
Number of vacancies. Woo! I just knocked my lamp over. Sorry about that.
Can't get the stuff nowadays, guys.
Yeah, I used to be a professional, but
used to be someone, used to be somebody.
I used to be someone on TV, but now, here I am, really. Anyway, where was I? Right, so it's more to do with the number of vacancies, really. You need a good enough spread of data. And what they normally say, I'm not suggesting you do this for a second, but what they normally do is you record the data until it's reversion to the mean. In other words, what you're going to come in is pretty much to the average that you've already got. You're pretty much where you need to be. But if you don't want to do that, just do it for half a dozen vacancies or something and see what that tells you. Okay. See if that helps.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, Mike, so I think we've got an idea on what we should be measuring. So now can we look at these 3 actions that you've got that will help people boost their productivity?
Yeah, and they're pretty straightforward, basically, based on what we said earlier, what we discussed already. The first one is invest in training and coaching for your people. I mean, it ostensibly, I know you think to yourself, well, we do train, and we put a lot of effort in on coaching. Yeah, well, that's fine, but you can measure the effects. So if it isn't working, keep going, or make a hard decision to let someone go because they're never going to get where you want them to be. And it is obviously, with training and coaching, you don't have to do it internally. Well, coaching you should do internally, really, but training, you can hire training companies to do it. Once you've got a training plan, personal development plan in place, and you know exactly what you're going to deliver, and those ratios will tell you where the problem is. I mean, it just does really. You can see where the problems are based on those ratios, whether they're higher or lower. Then you just train the bejeebers out of them until they get up to speed. I know it sounds pretty obvious, but it actually works. And if it doesn't, well, maybe they need to leave. Seek their future elsewhere.
Yeah, I think this one's so key, because very often people will do training and coaching just because they think it's probably right, whereas in actual fact, the thing that they need to focus on is here, and the training that they've got is over here. And so this helps you sort of really pinpoint where you need to put everything.
Yeah. I mean, the most dangerous type of training is the group training sessions, the Thursday training groups. I'm not saying don't do them, but that's not enough on its own, where you all sit down and learn something. Each person should have their own training plan based on their strengths and weaknesses. Well, weaknesses really. And you don't stop that training plan until they're where you need them to be. And then you move on. So the group sessions where you just cover one thing, it's great. And if you do it, carry on doing it. If you don't do it, you might like to do it. But that shared group training is not going to increase the individuals in the way that they need to be increased.
Okay. All right. So now can we go on to the second thing that people can do?
Well, just be selective on the vacancies that you work on and the hiring managers that you work as best as you can. I said in the real world, of course, that we all live in, you can't just, well, I'm not going to work with you anymore, or I'm not going to work those vacancies. I know that. But within the boundaries that you have, do your level best to work the vacancies that you make the most contribution from. Work with the hiring managers that you make the most money from, that you can be most efficient with. And when you seek people out and when you seek vacancies out, go for those types of vacancies and go for those types of people, and know the difference between the two.
Yeah, and this isn't you saying, if times do get a bit rough and you being like, oh, the conversion rates on that aren't good, we're not going to take that job. Everyone's sitting quiet, like waiting for the phone to ring. No, we don't take no, it's not that at all, is it? It's when there's a choice.
I'm not saying that. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And at the moment there is choice, but the more of those you do, the better you'll be at it, and the more likely you are to continue to get those kind of vacancies, weirdly. But absolutely. 100%.
Okay. All right, fantastic. And then the third one, I know this is a personal favorite of yours, and I know that this is.
Well, yeah, put your prices up. I mean, that's the most obvious way to get more money for the time that you invest. Put your prices up. And oh man, the tussles I have around this one, really. A million reasons why we can't do that. Yes, you can. Yes, you absolutely can. Okay, not all clients will stand a hike in prices. I get that. And if there's a recession, it's going to be even more difficult. But A, that shouldn't stop you having a process or a methodology to do that. And B, it certainly shouldn't stop you having a crack at it, quite frankly. So that's, for me, a really big one. Very close to my heart, actually.
And actually, on this, we are going to do a deep dive LinkedIn live show on this in July. I believe the 21st of July. We're going to do a whole show on this, aren't we?
I don't know when it is. Yeah, it is. We're going to do a whole show on lifting your prices, because I get so much malarkey about that. You just think, really, you can do this if you want to. So yeah.
Didn't you make someone up their prices and they paid for the consultancy with you within a month or something?
Oh yeah. I'll tell that story. I'm going to save that story for that particular show. Yeah.
Spoilers.
That's okay.
Sorry.
No. That's good. That's a good teaser right there. Like it you did.
So put that in your diaries. 21st of July. We're going to be talking about how we can up your prices. Okay, Mike. So in a second, I'm going to do a brief summary, and then we're going to come to your top tip that they should do. But before then, I want to let everybody know about next week. So next week we have a guest. I do believe it is Alan Smith, who is going to talk to us about how to become retirement wealthy. Oh, I like that phrase.
That means having enough feck off money, so I'm leaving, I don't care about you. That's what that means.
Oh, well, I very much enjoy it. I think as well, again, a lot of people get into business so that they can do that. So doing it sooner means you have a choice whether you go to work or not, which is what we all want, I think.
He's a good guy, Alan. He's a wealth manager. That's what he does. So he's not an IFA in the traditional sense, but he's going to come and tell us how to do that. He's not going to sell anything, I promise. He's just going to come and tell us how we can take the money that we have and make it work harder for us, which is pretty cool.
My favorite thing about those is the earlier you do them, the less work you have to do. Those things.
Absolutely. Compound interest is your friend.
100%. Okay, so if I may summarize, Mike, with this, we're looking at productivity. That's about getting more fees for your revenue consultant hour and lifting revenues without lifting costs. Those are what we mean by productivity. And there's lots of ways that you can do that. To do it, though, you have to monitor certain metrics, which we've looked at today. There are others, but it's profit per employee, contingent vacancies to fees ratio, your conversion figures for consultants, vacancies, and for hiring managers. Those are important. Focus on contribution, not fees. That's your focus on profit, not turnover. It's a similar thing. Contribution, not fees. And then finally, figure out your time invested per vacancy type. These are all metrics that they're going to show you areas where there are problems, areas that are improvement, availability, stuff like that. And then
there are loads more, actually. I've just picked out ones that I think are relatively easy to monitor or would have a big effect.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you can get overwhelmed by information. Sometimes having a smaller number of metrics.
Less is more.
Can make it more effective. And then we spoke about actions. So first of all, get that training and coaching sorted out. And we had a comment from Gavin saying that many recruitment managers are themselves not trained in coaching. So maybe they don't need recruitment training at this point. Maybe they need some help in how to coach others. That should be a priority. I think that's a good idea, Gavin. The second thing is be selective on vacancies and hiring managers. And on this, Mike, I remember a story that you told back in the day of SK, where I think your biggest client was Cadbury's, and didn't your business partner come to you and say, we're not making any money on them?
Yeah, he did, actually. Yes. And that was an interesting meeting that we had. Well, actually, it wasn't actually at Cadbury's. It was another company, but it allied to them. And yeah, we were doing a lot of turnover there, but we weren't making much in the way of profit because our margins had slipped and the amount of effort that we were putting in was too great. We were providing a Rolls-Royce service for a mini price, and is that a Skoda price? Because minis aren't cheap, are they?
Skoda's not cheap either.
Whatever. But we were providing a bigger service than we were charging for, and it's suicide. That if had we not detected that, we would have carried on. And of course, it's the amount of lost revenue. Get it fixed. There's a certain amount of time you and your consultants can spend. You have to maximize the revenue that comes from that time. That's the mentality for this productivity piece.
And I think with this as well is a lot of the reason you measure these metrics is when you had that discussion, you sort of didn't believe it. You were like, no, we've got loads of people on site. We're doing loads of turnover. Of course, it's profitable. But when you actually look at the stats, you think, maybe it's not. And it's sometimes can be a surprise.
That's why contribution is so useful, really. It's one of the measurements that I think people should enter into, yeah.
Okay. And then finally, the last thing you can do is put your prices up. We're a huge fan of it. It makes good sense. Why wouldn't you do it? So we have got a show on this on the 21st of July. So check in to learn a bit more about that. So Mike, people are watching this and they're thinking, right, Mike, I want to get this productivity boosted. I want to lift my profits. I want to help put myself in the best possible position if there's a recession at the end of the year. There's a lot we've gone through today. What's the first thing they should do? If they're going to do something today, what should it be?
Okay, I'm going to tweak a little bit. I'm going to say first thing is profit per employee, because I always say that. Just start measuring that. And if you can, go back and see what it was in the past and try and map 12 months worth of profit per employee and see what's happening in your business, because it's so easy to do and it tells you so much. So I'm kind of going with that one as a standing, Mike's tip. But my tip is going to be around about time, really. So whether you use Toggle or whatever you use, try and do some analysis to see how long it takes on average to satisfy the roles that you work on. Is there a pattern or is it totally random? If it's totally random, that's probably telling you something about your organization as well, because it shouldn't be that random. There should be some pattern to it. So to begin to do that study in your business, and then you can convert that into money and you can compare it with what you get back from that vacancy. It's another form of contribution, really.
Okay. So I think this has been a great show. I hope everybody. Oh, we've got a comment coming in. Oh, there we go. A lovely comment from Nikki. Great tips today. Thank you,
Nikki. Yeah, thank you.
I think it's been a fantastic show. I think we've fit a lot in. And Mike, thanks so much for sharing us, and thanks so much to our viewers for watching. So we will see you next week.
We will, with the great Alan Smith. It's going to be great. See you then, guys.